Good afternoon, everyone. Jody Brockington, and it's Wednesday, which means it's time for the National Urban League Digital Career Success Series. We want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon, and just some quick housekeeping. Please remember not to put us on hold. Please only put us on mute because we are recording. Today's session, like we do the rest, you all will receive as an email following this recording, along with a link to the audio as well as the slides so you can review it for yourself and or share it with others who are unable to join us today. We'd like to thank Dr. Dawn DeLavellade for joining us today. I think it's going to be a hot topic. I think it's something that we have all been excited about. Dawn has been working as a professional for a long time, and it is her mission to save the American marriage, and specifically marriages of color. She is not only a doctor, meaning a physician, an MD, a wife, a mother, and a writer. She has inspired many women and men around the world to really focus on their love, their life, and the things that they want out of it. Today's title of our career series is She Makes More. Think like a woman when she makes more. How can you think like Dawn, and how can we all get to a better place in our personal lives as we also step up the career ladder? Dawn and I have the pleasure of meeting each other a few times, but finally got to speak to each other without speaking in the past at the Black Enterprise Women of Power Conference this past year. While we were there, I just realized that she was the author of this book that I had just read, and also the wife of a good friend of mine. So this story and this family are very personal and near and dear. So today I'd like to bring to you a infamous friend of Jody, Dr. Dawn DeLavellade. Dawn?
Hi, Jody. Thank you so much for having me. I am so pleased to be here with you today. My name is Dr. Dawn DeLavellade, and I'm so pleased to be with you today for National Urban League Digital Career Success Series. I am pleased to be with you today. My topic is one that's very near and dear to me, and that is the female breadwinner and how she's changing the culture of American relationships. So the title of my talk today is Think Like a Woman Inside the Minds of Female Breadwinners. So some may ask, well, what does this have to do with a career success series? And I'll tell you what. And that is, generally when we think of career success, we don't think of it in isolation. We think of it within the context of a happy, healthy, personal life, a spouse, a supportive relationship, a fulfilling marriage, children. But modern women have begun to discover that career success may be inversely proportional to her ability to find a mate or to maintain a happy, healthy relationship, particularly if she makes more. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I am a physician. Specifically, I'm a radiology physician, and I identify with being the breadwinner in my marriage for many years. I began to notice, or it took me a few years to notice, that I was having some feelings of alienation and shame that were lying under the surface. And even when I recognized these feelings, I didn't know what to do with it. I felt like my marriage was upside down, inside out, and backwards because I was the higher earner in the marriage. And so there was one girlfriend's weekend back in June of 2010 where a friend of mine from medical school, she and I were on the beach in Marco Island, Florida. Our feet are in the sand. We're having drinks. And that was the very first time that she and I opened up and divulged to one another that we were both the primary breadwinners in our marriages. And even though we were very good friends, we had never shared this with one another before because, unfortunately, many couples in this situation do experience some degree of shame and alienation. And once we began to open up and talk, I can't tell you how much relief I experienced upon discovering a support system. I felt like I finally had that person who understood my circumstances, who I could, bounce ideas off of. Well, how do you approach this with your husband? And she could ask me about how did I approach things with ours, because it's not easy when a woman is the higher earner, because it may be very different from what we saw growing up, and it challenges some of the marital expectations and roles that we're taught as children. So I began to ask, well, how many other female breadwinners, the millions of female breadwinners, can also benefit from a support system like the one that I had just found? So it was on that beach that I was inspired to write my book, which is called She Makes More: Inside the Minds of Female Breadwinners. It's an investigation into who the female breadwinner is, how she thinks, and what she needs for her relationship to survive. So in the writing of that, I started out on a journey. I set out on a crusade to begin to understand the newest category of American woman and how she differs from the traditional wife. When she doesn't need money, she doesn't need financial support, what does she need from her mate? So let's start off by first, let's assess the state of affairs. How prevalent is the female breadwinner? Well, unfortunately, statistics on this are still just trickling through. We haven't quite come to grips on how much this is about to affect our relationship, so the data is scarce at best. So last year, the Pew Research Center released statistics stating that 40% of households with children under the age of 18 have a woman as the higher earner. And when these statistics were released, there was a media frenzy. It was on the news, it was on talk shows, it was in magazines, and it kind of felt like we were witnessing an epidemic, like the female breadwinner had just happened overnight. Well, all of us know nothing happens overnight. This phenomenon of the rise of the female breadwinner has been brewing for decades. So let's begin to look at some of the components that have contributed to these increasing numbers of female breadwinners. So there are three main factors: women taking advantage of education, women joining the workforce, and the most recent recession. And these forces combined, acting in concert, created what I call the perfect storm, leading to the rise of the female breadwinner. Now, I certainly don't have time for a women's history lesson. I would love to give a women's history lesson, but I don't have the time. So I'm just going to mention the aspect of American history that contributed the most to women joining the workforce was World War II, back in 1940 to 1945. And women were lured into the workforce by a propaganda campaign. The U.S. government, once we witnessed our young men putting down their rivets and other factory supplies and tools and heading off to war, our factories and our economy and our defense systems came to a screeching halt because our men were now gone and they were not able to maintain those duties. So the government created a propaganda campaign, a fictional character called Rosie the Riveter, and she was created to entice women out of that cocoon of domestic life and into those factories to pick up those tools to keep our factories going so we could continue to manufacture planes, munitions, war supplies. So you can imagine that if a woman was previously a housewife and now she's working in a factory, she's got her boots on, she's got her tools in hand, she's making her own money, her husband is away at war, so not only does she have her own money, but she can determine how she's going to spend that money. That created a real lasting sense of independence among women who now wanted to work and own and earn their own money. And then also, let's not forget the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and most of us think about that as beneficial to minorities. Well, sex or gender was added at the very last hour to that act, and it really has resulted in quite substantial gains as far as fighting against discrimination against women in the workforce. So the next component of that perfect storm is women in education. So the very first college was created back in the 1630s, and that was Harvard. It was not until 200 years later that women were allowed to get a college education. So it was actually inappropriate for women to receive an education, centuries ago. It was almost the same treatment as slaves received. You were not allowed to educate women. So and it's kind of funny that one of the reasons that we started to educate women as a nation was because after the American Revolution, many men, because teaching was predominantly a male profession back then, after the American Revolution, men no longer wanted those low-paying jobs of teaching. So, but we were also at a time in our country when we wanted to educate our children more. We wanted to provide them with formal education. So now we have a dilemma. We have schools and we have no teachers. So we said, let's draw women again let's educate them, let's help them fill this void in the teaching profession. And men were already having a low salary as teachers, but for women, they were seen as even more cheap labor. They were paid a third of what the men were paid. So you got cheap labor and you got a chance to fill that void in the teaching profession. But there was one pivotal event in our legislature which really, really opened the floodgates and allowed women to get degrees of higher education, and that was the Title IX of the Education Amendments back in 1972. And that basically said, the federal government said, any college or institution that is receiving federal funding, you are now forbidden from discriminating against women in your colleges and universities. So even though women had been allowed to go to college after American Revolution, there was a widespread discrimination about you can't take these courses, you can only do this, you can only do that. So they were forbidden from having access to a lot of different areas and degrees, and the Title IX was able to put a halt to that. So after that was put in place, women were allowed an even playing field with their male counterparts as far as college education. The women's interest in education truly soared. The enrollment of female high school graduates into colleges rose significantly. By the 1980s, the number of women receiving bachelor's degrees surpassed that of men. And by 2008, U.S. women earned more doctoral degrees than their male counterparts, and those statistics have lasted. So the third component of that perfect storm was the most recent recession. From 2008 to 2012, it was called the man session because 75% of job losses were in male positions, blue-collar fields like manufacturing and construction. During that time, women received, again, 60% of college degrees, and that recession catapulted a whole new cohort of women into that breadwinner position when their husbands lost their jobs. So as I said, data and research on the female breadwinner is not so prevalent, but let's take a look at some of the highest paying careers for women. And we can anticipate that these careers may have higher numbers of female breadwinners. So physicians and surgeons, I mentioned I'm a physician, I'm a female breadwinner. Pharmacists, chief executives, lawyers, computer software engineers, computer information system managers, physical therapists, speech language pathologists, computer programmers. Now, when we think about moving forward for a young woman, STEM careers are will be very lucrative in the future. That's science, technology, engineering, and math. And a woman who enters those fields can expect the fastest growth in the job market by 2018, and they can expect higher salaries and greater job security, again, possibly placing her in that female breadwinner position. Now I'm going to go back just one slide because this is a really great time to mention where we're headed in the future. So there were some statistics I found by the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and I'm just going to tell you what the future is going to look like. So in most American cities, single childless women ages 22 to 30 are making more than their male peers based on census data. By 2050, based on current trends and predictions, there will be 140 college-educated women in the U.S. for every 100 men. 9 out of 10 of the U.S. job categories expected to grow most in the next decade, including nursing, accounting, post-secondary teaching, are female-dominated fields. So we can see this trend is nowhere near slowing down and is certainly not going to reverse. We've got to come to grips with how it's affecting our relationships. So I'm just going to take this moment to give my own career advice to women who may foresee that they'll be in that female breadwinner position. First of all, you have to think forward about 10 years. Let's say you're a young woman, you're single, not married, no children. Think forward 10 years and imagine what you want your life to look like. Envision what you want your work-life balance to be. Do you want to be a very hands-on mom? Do you want to be, or are you okay having a nanny and having a stay-at-home dad or husband? Do you not want kids at all? So think ahead and see what you want your work-life balance to look like. Then design your career to match that vision of work-life balance. Because let's face it, as female breadwinners, sometimes we are not allowed the same luxuries as the traditional wife when it comes to having kids, taking time off. We can't have that prolonged maternity where we, leave our jobs for months at a time. We may not have the ability to be a stay-at-home mom once our kids are born. We've got to get back to work because the household is relying on us. For me, I took 8 weeks of maternity. I was right back in the hospital doing residency, working call overnight. My husband had the baby. So we've got to get right back into the swing of things because, again, the household is dependent on our income. So therefore, we don't have the luxury of just taking time off. So therefore, we have to create the life that we want, and we have to work toward that over the years. So when you're choosing a career, don't just choose something because you quote unquote like it, okay? Because what you like as a single woman with no husband and no kids, you may hate as soon as you have the responsibilities of a family. If that career choice is pulling you away from your family and you wanted to be that hands-on mom, what you liked in the beginning, you're going to hate in the end. So again, choose a career that you may not mind it, but it's going to give you the time and flexibility that you need to prioritize your family if that's what you want to do. For me, I knew that I wanted my family to be a priority, but yet I was in a field of medicine that was a very demanding field. So I know I had to pick and choose my choices very carefully in order to craft the sort of life that I wanted, and I was thankfully able to do that. Think outside the box for greater flexibility. If you want to be home with your kids, you want to be able to be available for birthdays and recitals, and you don't want to get paged out. You don't want to have to work crazy hours so that your kids don't see you because you're supporting the household. You need time and you need flexibility. When I say think outside of the box, I mean choose a path of greatest resistance. Take the road less traveled. If you see the majority of your peers going in one direction, do something a little bit different. Set yourself apart because in the end, that's going to allow you greater flexibility. Be willing to take risks now as a young woman with no obligation, no family obligations. Take those risks now because it's going to allow you greater happiness in the future. Let's say your company asks you to go to Amsterdam for 3 years to get some sort of training. Well, yeah, you may not want to go to Amsterdam for 3 years. It may be scary to you. You don't know the culture. You don't know anyone. Guess what? If you don't have the obligation of family and kids, you need to do it because that trip to Amsterdam, those 3 years it's going to seem so minuscule in the grand scheme of things as far as your life and your family that you have ahead of you. You have so many years ahead of you. Those 3 years in Amsterdam are going to, like I said, you're not even going to remember them. Same thing with going and getting extra education or degrees. If you're in medicine, hey, get an MPH. That's going to allow you some flexibility to do something other than being on call, being in the hospital, being that hamster on a wheel that we call, the medical profession. For me, as a radiologist, I took a risk 1 year after I got out of my training. I was doing the 9 to 5 rat race. My son was young. I was working in an outpatient radiology center, and I hated it. It was stressful. I had a young baby. My husband was traveling all the time. It was not the sort of life I envisioned for myself. I took a risk. I stepped out into a field called virtual radiology, where I sit at home. I read images from hospitals all across the country. It's night work. I work 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 7 nights on, 7 nights off. The time I entered this field, we were like redheaded stepchilds of radiology community. Everyone said, oh, virtual radiology, that's not real medicine. You need to be face to face with the doctors and the patients. No. I wanted to be home with my kids, and I did that. I've been home for 7 years now. I'm like a soccer mom. I pick him up every day at 3 o'clock. I'm out on field trips, birthday parties, all that. I'm never getting paid out of anything. I have realized a life that I never thought I could have within the field of medicine because I took that risk, and I encourage you to do the same thing. And lastly, make yourself a commodity. Okay, find what is this area or niche that nobody in your company wants to do, and do it. Okay, because you're going to make yourself more of a commodity. You're going to make yourself invaluable to that company, which will then allow you the time and flexibility to be a good mother and a good wife, despite being the primary earner in that household. So how did I go about investigating the female breadwinner? I interviewed women of various demographics. I provided a platform for them to express hidden thoughts and feelings that they had never shared with anyone else. What do they need from their mates that they're not getting? No one had ever asked these women, what do you need? They're so, as moms, as wives, we're so busy taking care of everyone else, making sure everyone else's needs are taken care of. Well, who's going to ask us what we need? And that's what I was able to provide for them. They shared thoughts and feelings. Again, they had never shared with anyone else, and I felt very privileged to be privy to that information. I had to provide anonymity to these women because, again, there's feelings of shame. Nobody wants to put their husband on blast, so all the names are fictional. So let's meet my breadwinners. So let's go behind the velvet rope and gain some insight into the hidden thoughts they've never shared with anyone. So this first breadwinner that we're going to meet is Breadwinner Monica. She's a 40-year-old female with 2 kids, married for 15 years. She started as a nurse, again, STEM field. Now she has a doctorate in nursing, and she's received tenure as her nursing professor. So she got additional education over and above her bachelor degree. Her husband did not. Okay, we're seeing a trend here. She works a regular day shift, then she works evenings as an online professor. She said, I feel a little resentful. I have a full-time job and I have an extra job that I love. I drop off and pick up our children from school because that's important to me. After school, I do stay-at-home mom stuff, and then I work from 7 to 11 p.m., and he's just enjoying life. He's working, but I feel that if I'm hustling, then he should be hustling. He could have more drive. He is content with just being average. I see him as being a little bit lazy. That's unattractive to me, but I could not tell him that. I realized how much of a problem it was for him when we were playing Scrabble with some friends. In the middle of the game, he stopped playing, got up and said, just because you have the title you have and make the money you do doesn't make you smarter than me, and he left the room. I was shocked. I didn't know he felt that way. He'd been keeping it all inside. Since then, I find myself tiptoeing around him, making sure not to come across like a know-it-all. I feel like I have to dumb myself down. When I recently told my husband I got a big promotion, he just said, oh, okay. I got no praise or recognition from him, so I called my father, thinking at least he would be proud of me. He said to me, you have to choose between family and career because a man can only take so much. I would like to be supported. I used to be timid, but now I can say that I'm smart. I would like somebody to say, yes, you are smart, and I'm proud of you for that. I just want to be able to be myself and not have to hide my abilities so as not to emasculate him. I have to hide the things about myself that I'm most proud of. I just want to be able to be myself. So what are some of Monica's challenges? And she has many. She struggles with her husband's insecurities. She doesn't feel supported or appreciated in her marriage. She suffers with competitive energy at home at the hands of her husband. She's made to feel guilty about her accomplishments. She must dumb herself down to appease him, and she's confused on how to advise her own daughter about how much education to get or how far to go in the workforce. Next, we're going to look at Breadwinner Donna. She's a 60-year-old woman with 1 child. She's now at the time I interviewed her, she was nearing retirement. She's college educated in the field of business, married to a man in the blue collar industry. She said, when our baby was 7 months old, I got the first paycheck, which was more than his. He told me to take the baby and run. You don't need me. Twice I turned down a salary increase. I worked for a company that didn't pay very much, and they got bought out. The new company gave us a raise, and everybody was happy except me. I took that raise home, and I got horrible glares and stares. I received no praise, nothing. I went back into the office and said, thank you very much, but it's not a good time for me to get a raise. I tried to keep things low-key. My family meant everything to me. When I look back at it, I'm sorry I did that because now I'm still trying to get back into my profession. At my age, it's harder for me now to get back on top. I'm restarting at a much lower salary. I've had to use my 401k funds now to survive because I took the minimum wage job. Now I've got all those penalties and all types of income tax problems. So yes, I made the money, I lost the money, I lost the job. The husband ran, so I'm just stuck financially. So what are Donna's challenges? She's married to a man who lost his self-esteem once her salary surpassed his. She made major attempts to placate his ego to no avail. She witnessed rage, frustration, and aggressive behaviors, particularly at tax time, and she sacrificed for love, but she was left in financial institution. So lastly, we're going to look at Breadwinner Annette. She's a 50-year-old female with 3 kids. She has a career in law enforcement. She's 2 years from retirement. Her husband lost his job in construction during the recession. He remained unemployed for an extended period of time. She said, when he lost his job, I took on the duties of taking care of the household. He just gave up. We have 3 kids between 8 and 11. I don't think he worked as hard as he could have. I would work a 12-hour shift and would go work another 4 hours, that's 16-hour day, then come home, take care of the kids and the house. If he could have put in as much work as I did, then we could have survived. When he was laid off, I became the decision maker. I think he just gave up. He's a very proud person, and because he didn't feel in control, he just stepped away from the situation. So Annette's challenges are that her husband was maladjusted to losing his breadwinner status after his job loss. He became indifferent and withdrawn, and subsequently the marriage failed. Her husband, in my opinion, probably had some undiagnosed depression. If he had gone to get some counseling, maybe their marriage could have been saved, but that's neither here nor there. So, because I come from a science background, I was a biology major, did lots of scientific research over my career, I always want to rely on evidence-based data. And since there's not so much research out there about female breadwinners, I decided to conduct some of my own research on my website, which is called shemakesmore.com. So there's a survey on my website, and when I ask female breadwinners, what is the most meaningful display of support that a husband can show to a female breadwinner, 51% said emotional support. So what does this tell us? This tells us that she is the antithesis of the gold digger, okay? Financial support was way down on the bottom. She's not looking for your money, okay? She marries for love. She wants to be supported. She wants to be loved. She wants someone to understand her, someone to celebrate her and her accomplishments, someone to say, I appreciate you. I appreciate everything you do for our household. I see that you're working hard, trying to keep the kids happy, the home clean. You're out working, busting your butt every day, making the majority of money for this household. I see you. I love you. I appreciate you. Those are the words she wants to hear. She didn't marry you for money. She married you for love, and that's what she expects in return. 31% say they want domestic help, meaning thaw out a piece of chicken every now and then and cook something for the household. Make sure there's not a lot of dirty dishes in the sink. Help put the kids to bed. Get them on a routine, okay? She really values a man who is able to help her with all the domestic responsibilities of that household. One more question in my survey. What is the most significant way that men can show leadership despite having a lower salary? 29% say showing respect to others in the household. What does that mean? That means she does not want to be marginalized because she's a woman. She does not want to be belittled. She wants her accolades, her accomplishments, her intelligence to be valued. She wants to be your partner. She doesn't want to hear things like, go sit down. It's okay, and I understand that men sometimes they want to handle certain situations. But if there's really a crisis, she wants to be viewed as a partner, and she wants her capabilities and her know-how and her intellect to be utilized and appreciated. Don't disrespect her by treating her like she's just a dame. Okay, she hates that. 22% say they want assistance again with domestic chores. That's how a man can show he's a leader. 20% having financial literacy. 14% sacrificing for the family. 12% handyman skills and household maintenance. Me personally, I place handyman skills at the top. I don't know what it is. I think a man should be able to take care of his house and keep it in running condition. But every woman is different. So I never want to be in front of a crowd without gathering some additional data. So I have created a custom survey. Again, I'm in the process of generating my own data about the female breadwinner. So let's see if I can make this happen. I'm going to try to, that's the survey link there. I'm going to try to see if I can send the link.
Actually, okay, Dawn, we already got it. Sorry.
Okay, excellent. So if you're able to click on that link, it's a very quick 2-question survey, and then we're going to go over the answers at the end. So just take a moment and do that. Moving on. So what were some of the commonalities among these women that I discovered in my interviews? First, she does experience resentment if her mate lacks ambition. And every woman will have a different idea of what that means. Lacks ambition. What does that mean? Well, we looked at Monica and she said, hey, I'm working 2 jobs. I'm working a regular job and I work another 4-hour job at nighttime. What are you doing? She doesn't want to see that she's doing more than he is. On the flip side, a man may say, hey, I was working this one job when we met, so why all of a sudden do I have to now work 2 jobs to keep up with you? If you want to work 2 jobs, that's your choice, but why do I have to do it? So this is not about right or wrong answers. This is about every couple finding how they can, have a meeting of the minds, how they can sacrifice and compromise to meet each other halfway. In Monica's opinion, and in many breadwinner opinions, she doesn't want to feel like she's working harder than he is, or else it will lead to resentment. Another commonality, and this is just human nature, following her man's lead can be a struggle if he's not as educated or accomplished. That is human nature, okay? None of us want to follow someone into battle if we feel like we have more know-how or knowledge than they do, okay? So this is not about her being high on the horse or whatever. Again, this is just human nature, and we have to figure out how to work through this. If she has more education than he does, which again, the trend is showing, it's happening all over the nation. We have to begin to work through how can he still maintain that leadership position. Does he have to go back to school and get more education? Not necessarily, because he can show that he's a leader in so many other ways than, just book smart. But again, he has to be willing to display those leadership characteristics. Next, if her mate is financially irresponsible, she may remove him from the equation. What does that mean? Well, if she makes the majority of money in that household, and right now they have joint accounts, and she sees that consistently he's irresponsible with money, guess what she'll do? She'll separate the accounts. You got your account, I have mine. That lessens her liability. Whatever tomfoolery he's going to engage in with his money, she doesn't want to be a part of it. When his money runs out, I guess he just has to deal with it. So she'll separate the accounts as the first step. It may even get to the point where she has to give him an allowance. And it sounds terrible, but these are real life situations that are going on. Once she gets in a place where she's giving him an allowance, what does that do for the psyche of both parties? What does that do for his psyche to be treated like a child and given an allowance? What does that do for her psyche to be thinking of her husband like a kid? So again, these are very unhealthy trends, but what can a man do to prevent this? Be financially responsible. Gain some know-how. And even if you weren't taught as a child or you weren't taught in college how to manage money, this is the information age. There's absolutely no reason why a man can't learn about how to manage money so that when she makes the money, guess what? It's household money. It's not just hers. But she has to know that when she hands that money over to you as her leader, you're going to know what to do with it. Invest it. Put the family on a budget and help them stay with it. Work toward financial goals. Make sure your family is in a better place in 5 years than you are now, and in 10 years than you are in 5 years. If her mate lacks leadership as the head of household, guess what? She just may take over. Because now she's educated, she's accomplished, she has life experiences, and she sees that you are not ready to step into that head of household position based on your actions, not words, actions. She has the choice to take over if she wants to. Her ship is not going down like the Titanic. I can guarantee you that. She will not allow her ship to sink. So either you're going to be in charge as a capable leader and captain, or she's going to take over. And again, those sorts of dynamics have ramifications as far as sexual intimacy is concerned once you get into this mother-child sort of dynamic. And again, not very healthy. So for me, my passion is to begin to help the female breadwinner define ourselves. Okay, there's a quote by Audre Lorde that says, if I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched into other people's fantasies for me and eaten alive. Again, we have to engage in some introspection, some self-discovery as female breadwinners. We need to create our own identity, or else society will create an identity for us and project that onto us, and I guarantee you it will be less favorable and less accurate. How many times have we heard things like, oh, she doesn't need a man, or, you know, she's one step away from lesbian? These things are urban myths, okay? Because guess what? As I investigate female breadwinners, and my passion is to properly introduce them to society, I have discovered these women really do want to uphold traditional gender roles. Men, they really do want you to be the head of household. It's just that they do have certain criteria about what that head of household looks like. So myth buster number one, she does want you to be in control. And again, if she's challenging you for control, that's because she sees a lack of leadership in your actions, and you need to figure out, what does a leader look like to my wife? Because your wife may have a different leadership profile than your friend's wife. You know, what are the characteristics? Sit down and talk to her. What are the characteristics that you want to see in me as a leader or head of household? And let me be able to try to step into that position if you love her. If you love her, you will do that. Next, female breadwinners do expect, again, proficient leadership. Think about a company. We are not going to allow, the company is not going to hire a CEO if that person doesn't have any experience or know-how, or they haven't proven that they can run that company. It's kind of a similar approach. We're past the days where a man was head of household simply because of his gender. That's the way it was centuries ago. He's the man, he's in control. It was presumed that he was omnipotent, he was more knowledgeable, more life experiences. Those days have passed. She wants to see that you are competent and ready to lead. Again, financial literacy is crucial to her ability to trust. If she can't trust you with her money, it's a severe sign of a lack of weakness. And lastly, the majority of female breadwinners I have spoken with would not leave their career behind for their husband's ego. Okay? If a man says, the fact that you make more than me, it makes me feel like less of a man, She's not leaving her career for that because that's something you've got to find on the inside. Okay, self-esteem is not something she can give you. That's something you have to find. And I held a focus group of men who are married to female breadwinners. I held a focus group and asked them, what can she do to make you feel better about yourself? And you know what their answer was? Nothing. He must be in charge of helping. That has to come from within, whether it's counseling or whatever it may be, that has to come from him. So quickly, they view assistance with domestic duties as one of the greatest forms of support. If you can cook dinner on a regular basis, help clean the house, you'd probably rather have that than a diamond tennis bracelet. These women practice a pattern of withholding of information as a coping strategy, which ultimately leads to poor communication. If every time she tells you something good happening in her career, you have a tantrum, meaning you're acting out, like Donna said, she got horrible glares and stares. The other husband is up stomping out of the room doing Scrabble because he's offended and all these things. And she gets to the point where she cannot communicate with you because you don't know how to handle that information. She will stop sharing with you. And we know that can be very detrimental. That leads to omission of information and ultimately to lying. And this is the final point. If you don't remember anything, please remember this. If this woman can't find happiness, she may leave. How many of us know mothers or grandmothers who stayed in an unhappy marriage, sometimes even abusive marriage, because they couldn't take care of themselves and they couldn't take care of their children? This woman, again, she marries for love. And if you can't find out how to love her, she will leave. She can take care of herself. She can take care of her children. And it's very important for men to understand that. Please, all we want really is love and leadership. So if you are a female breadwinner and you're listening, I invite you to complete my quick survey, shemakesmore.com. And also, if you join the Inner Circle, you'll have access to free monthly teleconferences geared just toward female breadwinners. So my belief system, I have 3 parts. 1, relationships containing a female breadwinner can thrive once there is honest communication between the genders about how the presence of a female breadwinner makes each of them feel. 2, female breadwinners can achieve greater happiness and fulfillment with their circumstance once they are provided a platform to share hidden thoughts and feelings without fear of the male ego. 3, men can realize greater happiness and fulfillment in a relationship with a female breadwinner once they learn how to achieve, maintain, or regain a position of leadership in the relationship. My crusade, the She Makes More crusade, is to help create an identity for female breadwinners in America, to be a catalyst for honest communication, to help men better understand us as a unique category of women, and to help us as a society move toward a place of greater acceptance and healing. So if you'd like to continue the conversation with me, please follow me on Facebook at She Makes More. I'm on Twitter at Dr. She Makes More. My website, shemakesmore.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Dawn DeLavellade, and my email is dawn@shemakesmore.com. I love speaking about this topic, so if you're in an organization or group or club and you think you want to talk more about this, a book club, I'm happy to oblige. Dawn@shemakesmore.com. Here's the book. It's available on my website and on Amazon. Again, it is a manual to help men better understand this woman and to help female breadwinners better connect with other women in their same circumstance. If you're a music lover like I am, and you'll be at Essence Music Fest to see His Royal Badness Prince in the beginning of July, my book will be at the Essence bookstore, so please check it out. And I'm just going to end with this selfie I took. This is a picture of the horizon on the Greek island of Mykonos while I was writing my book. And what's on the horizon for the female breadwinner? Well, only time will tell. But in my honest opinion, if we fail to get actively engaged to bring about a positive outcome, the rise of the female breadwinner has the potential to negatively affect the institution of marriage and the American family. So let's have the courage to start having this discussion with our spouses, with our friends, at the water cooler, the more we talk about it, the less taboo it will feel, and the greater or the closer we will come to a place of acceptance and healing. And that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for your attention. But guess what? I'm going to go back and I'm going to see what your answers were for the 26 submissions. Let's go back and see what your answers were for the survey. Okay. So, wait. Let's see. Okay, let's see if I can get it to work. Okay, so of the women, 100% say that, say no, that a woman should not leave her career behind if it affects her ego. So I guess for the women, we're all on the same page. I am not sure where my male submissions are. Maybe I don't have any male submissions, which is okay. But I think as women, we're all in agreement with that. Okay, we're all women. Excellent. So we're all in agreement. We're not leaving our career behind, and men need to understand that. So thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yes, well, Dawn, you have a lot of questions, so, you definitely hit on some of the points, but then I guess everyone always wants a little bit more information from the great speaker. So the first question is kind of a combo of a few, that there are some women on the line and listening with us today, who feel ashamed when they can afford more. Their wallet is bigger than their husband's. They're not particularly, going out and buying Prada bags and, spending on frivolous things, but they refuse to settle for minimum. And, but they want some advice on how to balance these feelings. Like besides, if they don't have a support group or they don't have a breadwinner circle, what are some ways to kind of, stay mentally ready for these kind of situations, knowing that it's going to be regular?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's something that a lot of us do struggle with, when you can afford nice things and your husband can't. I think definitely it's a sign of the times. So, that's one thing, to be able to have a discussion with him to say, well, this is just really a sign of how things have changed. I like some nice things as a woman, and I'm going to buy a few nice things for myself, even if you can't afford it. So, that's one thing that to begin to understand that it's a sign of the times, and it's not going to change. Another, you can buy him some nice things. When you buy yourself a bag, maybe buy him something that he may enjoy too, so he kind of feels included in the shopping spree. If nice things are important to you, and I don't judge anyone, but as far as ways that men can show support to their women, there are some women who that's how they want to be shown love. They want to be given material gifts. And it's not my place to judge anyone. If you are that type of woman, be able to explain that to him and to say, maybe you can find some extra cash here or there. There's lots of ways to get extra cash nowadays. I'm famous for just looking in my closet and selling things that I haven't used in a couple of years if I know I have, something I want to buy for myself and I can't really justify it. Be honest and say, are you okay with maybe finding extra cash here or there, and so that every once in a while you can buy me a gift? He probably will enjoy buying you that gift from his own account, as opposed to always dipping into the money that he may feel is yours to buy you that. So again, it's all about conversation. What does he feel comfortable with? Is he uncomfortable with you buying those things, or are you making the assumption that he's uncomfortable because you haven't really had that conversation? So again, I think it's something that we have to talk about, and we have to be willing to compromise. If he says, look, it does make me uncomfortable when you buy yourself a Prada bag, find out, is it because he also wants something expensive? And if that's the case, just get it for him. Otherwise, does that mean that it's something that you yourself may have to give up? You may have to give up that Prada bag if you love him. And if you guys have that conversation and he says he's not okay with that, we have to sometimes make sacrifices for our mate.
Yeah, no, excellent point. And Today on our calls, we always have a nice range of folks from younger 20s all the way into 50s, maybe 60s. So I'm here to give a voice that was definitely in the question to the middle of the road, the 30, 40 something, who said that you gave a lot of great insights for potentially younger folks to think about their future relationship, not that they don't have a 10-year window themselves. But for those women who are already married, already the breadwinner, might or might not have kids, they just want some tips on, keeping your relationship engaging after some time, and also maybe some of them have experienced being the breadwinner and then not being the breadwinner, and kind of sharing that with their husband based on what's going on in the economy. So when the breadwinner ship is changed over time, how does that maybe impact roles and relationships? So any advice for those who are kind of mid-career into their marriage and into their career?
So as far as the switch in the breadwinner, meaning that she is now the breadwinner, or?
Right. I'm saying this is a few people that they have been the breadwinner, and then the economy kind of changed, or they had the kid, and then they stayed at home, and then the husband took that role on. And, in some cases it's that, and some they are just the breadwinner.
Mm-hmm. Well, definitely for the breadwinner, again, that's what I identify with. If you have not sat down and had that honest conversation, communication, I think it's time to do it. And it is going to be hard. There is no doubt about it. If you have never broached that topic, it is going to be challenging. But how else will we, get over the rainbow unless we understand what he's thinking and he understands what we're thinking? Now, let's say if you're struggling as a breadwinner, meaning he's, in your eyes, he's not stepping up to the plate in whatever way. Does he know what you're thinking? Does he know why or how he needs to step up to the plate? And if the answer is no, it's time to start talking gently, of course. Find a way to say it very gently or say it slowly over time, but allow him to understand what are those ways that the forms of leadership that you need to see in him. And once he understands that, he can either choose to change and to take on some of those characteristics, or he can choose not to. That's his choice. That's the choice he has to make. But once you put it out there to say, I would really feel like I would appreciate you so much more as a head of household if you were to do these things. So that's number one, having that tough conversation that we all want to avoid. As far as the woman who was the breadwinner and now she's not, that's hard because, as breadwinners, we feel so empowered. We feel so in control sometimes. And, my husband sometimes will say to me, well, you're just going to do what you want to do anyway. And that's kind of true. Yeah, I kind of am going to do what I want to do because that's who I am. That's how I've always been. And there's nothing preventing me from doing that. For small things, I don't need a lot of direction for the small things in my life. Obviously, big things, we're going to share it as a couple. But for things that relate to me, and I don't need any instruction or direction from someone. I do what I want to do. Yes. So when you go from that place of feeling very empowered, it can be hard because now you are maybe feeling like a second-class citizen sometimes. Maybe you feel like, well, hey, when I was a breadwinner, I didn't make you feel that way, and now that things have changed, you're making me feel bad, or you're making me, you're mistreating me, and that's hard to deal with. But again, I think it's about having that conversation to say, and not while you're yelling. Okay, please don't do it while you're yelling because no one's going to really hear and understand you. Do it when things are smooth, things are good, and say, this is how it makes me feel when you do this. When you make me feel like I'm not important, or make me feel like I'm, just a nanny or whatever it may be. Make it very clear of how it makes you feel and say, do you think you can maybe do a little bit better? Because it really does hurt my feelings. And again, if he loves you, why wouldn't he change? But again, we have to just be honest and put it out there.
Great. The other, got a lot of just comments of how much you made some people really think out loud some things that they've had on their mind or haven't really, maybe verbalized to themselves some of the feelings and in some of the examples you gave. And a couple of them have a question about joining your group. Can they join your group if they're not a breadwinner yet, but plan to be once they start growing their business, et cetera, and based on your career list, a lot of folks on the line, that's their future, or they're, en route to some of those things. So can they join your group, the Breadwinner Circle, even though they're not yet fully in there? And also, do you find that there's a racial component to the experience of the female breadwinner, meaning that does race play a role in some of the outcomes and feelings and what comes up, or is this across the board for all women breadwinners?
Well, to answer the first question, absolutely. Please join all the future breadwinners. It is definitely a title that is good to prepare for because it's not always easy. And so please, yes, join. Go to shemakesmore.com, join the Breadwinner Inner Circle, and have access to those monthly teleconferences. And it really is information that is applicable to many women. So yes, you are definitely welcome. And the second question, oh God, I'm sorry.
I was just thinking if it's for all women, or does the She Make More syndrome cut across all races?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, it's all races. This is definitely something that is not, and it's not even just happening in our country. This is happening around the world. Definitely as far as statistics, U.S. and Great Britain, I think, are kind of tied for prevalence right now, but also France, Australia. Every day there's a new article about how this shift is changing around the world. So it's definitely something that is a global phenomenon, and in this country, absolutely, it's affecting races across the board.
Gotcha. So some of the folks that are on my side of the camp, not yet married, wanted to know if, at what point do you disclose your income, or is it pretty clear from the lifestyle that you are in, the circles you're in, kind of where you stand maybe versus the men or the man in your life?
Those are always tough questions, in the dating realm. I am a proponent of don't think you're going to change someone after the fact. I almost feel like, when we're in the very early courtship stage, a man needs to understand what he's getting into, because he may want to go down that road and he may not, and that is his choice. Sometimes we feel like, well, if I hide what I do, then he'll fall in love with me, and then it'll be easier for him to deal with it and all of that. I personally don't recommend that approach. I feel that, there's a certain subset of men who will never be able to handle a female breadwinner for whatever reason, whether it's their upbringing, something about their makeup. They will never be able to handle that woman. So to me, it's better to find that out up front and say, how do you feel about a woman who earns more? I mean, this can be on one of your dates. How do you feel about a woman that earns more than her man? And if he says, hell no, I would never be able to do that. Well, then you understand what you're up against. And I think at that point you may want to say, you know what, I've had a great time, but I just don't think it's going to work. We like to think we're going to change a man, but in this instance, I think you're headed for a road of heartache and sorrow if you choose a man who clearly has stated he cannot handle a woman in that situation. So my advice, get it out there early on so that you don't continue down a path with a man who will not be accepting of you in the future.
Okay, I have one last combo question because we're steering towards the very end of our time today, but it's really people are very curious about any data, qualitative or quantitative, on the men's perspective of this, if this is available on your site or other places. And then you gave a lovely list of career choices that women tend to be breadwinners but is there a list, or do you have just some personal knowledge of knowing what professions that men are in who are not intimidated by women breadwinners?
I wish I did have that list, but I think that list of men who are not intimidated, that's actually not, I would not place that under sort of a career characteristic as much as just his general makeup. You know, what did he see growing up? What type of man is he? That to me has nothing to do with career. That's something that's just going to have to come from conversation for you to figure out, is he going to be able to handle this or not? There are some men who are so open to this, you won't believe, you know, and then there's the other extreme of some men who are totally opposed. So it's just a matter of finding that man who has the personality to be able to deal with it. And I don't think it has anything to do with his career as much as just his, personality or his makeup. As far as the opinions of men, that's actually going to be my second book. I mean, of course, I talk to men. I've talked to men along the way, all along my journey, but I don't have anything formal on my website about what their thoughts are. But it varies. Again, it really does vary. But as long as a man is able to continue to wear those pants, I think he's okay with that breadwinner. It's just a matter of that couple finding the right middle of the road so that he can maintain that leadership position. I think that is very important to men. And again, based on my experiences, breadwinners really want their man to stay in charge. It's just that now she has certain criteria of what does that head of household look like, and we need to help our men step into those positions more.
Well, I want to thank you all for joining us today. We got through, I'd say, about 99% of the questions, and I combined the rest of them to make it maybe 110%. So we want to thank you for joining us today for the National Urban League Digital Career Success Series. And we will be back next week to leverage your funds, how to build your network, and in unlikely places, which is my expertise as a master networker. Often while it's summertime, we all think that we go on spring break or summer break, and it's sometimes the best time to make the connections that you really need for your career and for your personal life. And we, too, will be at the Essence Festival along with Dawn at the Expo Hall. And if you'd like to meet us there live, we'll be hosting a bunch of career fair and career workshops throughout the entire event. So please come and join us. And we will be back here next week for Leveraging Your Funds. Please learn how to build your network, know your net worth, and to continue that you never know where you're going to find someone. So thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you, Dawn, for a very compelling session. Everyone has definitely sent in that they want to get the notes and share them and listen to them again. So thanks, and we look forward to hearing from you when you have book number 2, if not before.
Thank you so much for having me, and I had a wonderful time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.